It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
So I wanted, before we get started, to let everyone know that I have a new podcast out, and it's called Meditations. If you like the Meditations segment of this current podcast, you'll like the Meditations podcast. It's nothing but 20 minutes of meditative sounds. And now, on with the podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Caesar's Palace for 12 rounds of boxing. In the red corner, from Los Angeles, California, wearing the red trunks with the gold trim, weighing in at 125 pounds, the lightweight champion of the world, Danny Little Red Lopez. Well, Bill, our winners get a home theater receiver. That's right. Experience the full potential of high-definition video with this 72-channel digital home theater receiver from Yamaha. But wait, that's not all. They also get a 5.1-channel surround sound system from Mirage. With 5 palm-sized speakers and a compact subwoofer cube, the MX 5.1 brings you huge immersive sound with Mirage's omnipolar technology. All from the Spiegel catalog, Chicago, Illinois, 60609. And they're taking closer order as down the stretch they come. Mr. Hot Stuff has 3 lengths to make up with chocolate candy last. On the rail, take the points behind that gallant son with chocolate candy gaining on the outside. In the lead is Pioneer of the Nile being tackled by chocolate candy. They're neck and neck as they come to the wire. And Pioneer of the Nile holds off chocolate candy and wins the Santa Anita Derby. And now, on your feet, time to greet holder of 14 NBA titles, your home team, your Los Angeles Lakers. Number 3 at 6'8", 5th year out of UCLA, playing forward, Trevor Ariza. Starting at center, number 17 at 7 feet, 4th year out of St. Andrews High School, Andrew Bynum. And at guard, number 24, 6'6", 13th season out of Loyal Marion High School, Kobe Bryant.
It is a story about an elderly couple who were getting ready for bed one night, and she said, "Oh, I just am so hungry for ice cream, and there isn't any in the house." And he said, "I'll get some." "Oh," she said, "you're a dear." And she said, "Vanilla with chocolate sauce." He says, "Vanilla with chocolate sauce." She said, "Write it down. Now you'll forget, dear." He said, "I won't forget." She said, "Some whipped cream on top." And he said, "Vanilla with chocolate sauce, whipped cream on top." And she said, "And a cherry." And he said, "And a cherry on top." "Oh," she said, "please write it down. I know you'll forget." He said, "I won't forget. Vanilla with chocolate sauce, whipped cream, and a cherry on top." And away he went. By the time he got back, she was already in bed. He handed her the paper bag. She opened it, and there was a ham sandwich. And she said, "I told you to write it down. You forgot the mustard."
Good morning. It's Monday, Trust Your Mind Monday, June the 9th, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have the headlines, patriotic shorts, motivation, Bishop Barron, Ayn Rand, and Trust Your Mind. All that and more when I get back. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I should not change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Thank you. And now the headlines for Monday, June the 9th. Breaking. The FBI is now offering a $50,000 reward for information leading to the ID, arrest, and conviction of the agitator that was seen on camera throwing rocks at federal vehicles as they drove by him during an anti-ICE riot in Paramount yesterday. Multiple Waymo vehicles set ablaze in Los Angeles. This is the third day in a row in which demonstrators have gone against the advice of city and state officials who are saying violent protests won't be tolerated. Mayor of LA Karen Bass calls for peaceful protests in Los Angeles after President Donald Trump sends in the National Guard over anti-ICE unrest. A man wearing a Palestinian keffiyeh protests America by wrapping himself in the flag of Mexico, which last year elected a Jewish president. Restaurant workers are now helping officers in California because Gavin Newsom has abandoned them. And that is the headlines for Monday, June the 9th. Thank you. And now, the political corner.
The LGBTDL community is about to make God cancel rainbows. Now walk with me. Stop using Pride Month as an excuse to have no self-respect. Why are grown men on their knees pretending to be dogs so that kids can pet them every June? No matter how good the MDMA is, you are not Madonna nor Gaga, so why are you naked on Sunset Boulevard? You can have pride and keep your clothes on. Show your pride by living a good life. Show your pride by getting in shape so that you aren't having to constantly breathe loudly out of your mouth. Planned Parenthood is the busiest they've ever been, not because of pregnancies, but STD screenings. So many of you will spend July itching and burning because the slope is too slippery. And yes, we all grew up watching Reading Rainbow, but that doesn't mean that we need a drag queen story hour. There isn't enough Clorox in the world to clean up the homoerotic, fatherless inner city culture that is cultivated here, and I'm afraid that the city is going to turn into a biblical curse. So save your kinks for the brothels, bathhouses, and bedroom, because I don't need to see sex toys on a headband on my way to Air One.
And that was the political corner. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, the Patriotic Short.
The radio crackled, the static spitting out a garbled message. Hostilities cease. It was May 7th, 1945, and Sergeant Charlie Havlett was on patrol in his tank destroyer, the news washing over him. Years of fighting were finally behind him. The Czech countryside looked almost peaceful in the late afternoon sun. It was a stark contrast to the horrors he'd witnessed across Europe. His thoughts turned to his family back home in Nebraska. "Don't get too comfortable. We're still in enemy territory," Lieutenant Davies cautioned. As they rounded a bend near the small town of Volary, a burst of machine gun fire ripped through the air, shattering the fragile peace. A small group of German soldiers hidden in the trees engaged in a firefight, unaware of the ceasefire. Charlie Havlett died minutes later, becoming the last American soldier killed in action in the European theater of World War II.
And that was the Patriotic Short. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, let's get motivated.
I'm tired of people telling me how bad they want it, yet their actions don't back up that statement. Don't be somebody who talks shit. Be somebody who does shit.
And that was a little bit of motivation. Back in a minute. Thank you, and now we meditate. And that was a little bit of meditation. Back in a minute. Thank you, and now the Daily Stoic.
Could happen to you. Being unexpected adds to the weight of a disaster, and being a surprise has never failed to increase a person's pain. For that reason, nothing should ever be unexpected by us. Our minds should be sent out in advance to all things, and we shouldn't just consider the normal course of things, but what could actually happen. For is there anything in life that fortune won't knock off its high horse if it pleases her? Seneca, Moral Letters, 91.3a through 4.
And that's the Daily Stoic. And now, His Excellency, Bishop Robert Barron.
Do you know how our culture puts such a premium now on safety, doesn't it? Safe spaces and keeping us safe, and I'm being threatened, and that's threatening my safety. Well, look, I mean, I get it. We all want to be safe. It's a value. But can I suggest to you that a religion that puts before our eyes a man pinned to a cross is not a religion putting a high priority on safety? The saints don't strike me as people that were really big on safety. Rather, find your mission. Let Christ come to life in you. Set your heart on fire. Become, in some way, and look, it's different for every one of us, because the Lord gave us distinctive gifts and a distinctive experience and background. We're meant to carry His love into the world in some distinctive way. And then you'll know who you are. Do your mission. You'll find joy.
And that was His Excellency Bishop Robert Barron. Thank you. And now, Bill Maher with some self-censorship.
And finally, new rule, now that it's been a month since I gave the commencement address at Berkeley, someone has to check in with the people who tried to have my speech canceled and make sure they made it through okay. Also, since they were protesting me for once saying that Islam is, quote, the only religion that acts like the mafia and will kill you if you say the wrong thing or draw the wrong picture, and then 2 jihadists gunned down 12 people in Paris for saying the wrong thing and drawing the wrong picture, you have to tell me, where do I go to protest you?
And that was Bill Maher with a little bit of self-censorship. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, Varney and Company
are waking up to a very tense city. National Guard troops are guarding the Federal Detention Center, which holds some of the criminal migrants arrested by ICE. Downtown Los Angeles has a very heavy police presence. Over the weekend, violent confrontations. Tear gas, cars burned, the Mexican flag appeared. President Trump sent in the National Guard. Governor Newsom blames Trump for the riots and will file suit demanding the president rescind his National Guard order. California is challenging federal authority. Those rioters with their Mexican flags are challenging America. The events in California not having much, if any, impact on stocks, but the start of China trade talks today in London, giving the markets a positive spin. The Dow up maybe 30, S&P up 7, Nasdaq up 12 points. Minor gains. Check Apple stock today. Today is their Worldwide Developers Conference. Investors want to know what is in Apple's AI future. The stock holding above $200 a share. We have an analyst on the show a bit later who says it's going to $250. Bitcoin priced around $107,000 right now. It's going up. The 10-year Treasury yield, that's coming in around 4.52%. That's going up above 4.5%. As for the 2-year, you're right at, it moved up a bit some more, 4.04% on the 2-year. Politics. The president received a thunderous reception at the UFC event in New Jersey on Saturday night. Merab Devashvili won the big fight, beating Sean O'Malley. The audience loved Trump. The fighters loved him too. And Alcaraz beat Sinner in a 5-set marathon thriller for the French Open. I don't know how these guys do it. 5 hours of intense competition. They didn't even seem out of breath.
You watched every second of it.
I did, as a matter of fact. It took up most of my Sunday.
I know.
There
You were
go.
telling
It was
me.
worth it. It was worth it. It is Monday, June the 9th, 2025.
And that was Varney and Company, non-profit news now. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now the postscript to Varney and Company, what he was talking about with, especially in Los Angeles and riots and whatnot. This reminds me that Democrats could be, because the Democrats now look really feeble and weak. They're desperate to try to be relevant. And Gavin Newsom underscores that point by suing the federal government. What a moron. Anyways, the Democrats could be running this country top to bottom if, as I said before, they had simply done what they should have done, and that is if you're going to let all these millions of illegal immigrants into the country, then you sign them up and put them to work. The whole reason for letting all these people in was to shore up Social Security. The theory was we let them in, they'll get jobs, they'll start working, they'll pay into Social Security, problem solved. But no, instead they come into the country and they just sit there. Then you have activist groups that whine and complain that they're not getting services, and we end up spending more money on them than they spend on us, so to speak. All they had to do was immediately as they come over the border, you sign them up. Some people are going to go to work for the Forest Service and go to the West Coast. Some are going to go to the FEMA and go to the East Coast, and they're all going to get paid. You're going to give them paychecks, and then they'll pay into Social Security. In the meantime, they're fighting fires on the West Coast and cleaning up hurricane damage on the East Coast. And if they'd simply done that, it's called follow-through, by the way. If they'd simply followed through with this, they'd be heroes. Kamala Harris would be the president of the United States. Democrats would own the Senate and the House, and probably every governorship in this country. But for whatever reason, maybe because they're stupid, maybe because they're just cowards, I don't know. Maybe because they're stupid cowards, they didn't do it. They didn't follow through. So now they're going to have to eat it, so to speak. It's they're the ones that are going to have to play catch up. They're the ones that are going to have to suffer, and maybe for decades to come. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now from a book that's called Good Inside. What's the opposite of understanding? For this argument's sake, it's convincing. Convincing is the attempt to prove a singular reality, to prove that only one thing is true. Convincing is an attempt to be right, and as a result make the other person wrong. It rests on the assumption that there's only one correct viewpoint. And then my question is this supposed to be convincing? Further, convincing has one goal in mind, being right. And here's the unfortunate consequence of being right. The other person feels unseen and unheard, at which point most people become infuriated and combative, because it feels as if the other person does not accept your realness or worth. Feeling unseen and unheard makes connection impossible. Understanding two things are true and convincing one thing is true are diametrically opposed ways of approaching other people, so a powerful first step in any interaction is to notice which mode you're in. When you're in one thing is true mode, you're judgmental of and reactive to someone else's experience because it feels like an assault on your own truth. As a result, you will seek to prove your own point of view, which in turn makes the other person defensive because they need to uphold the realness of their experience. In one thing is true mode, exchanges escalate quickly. Each person thinks they're arguing about the content of the conversation when in fact they're trying to defend that they are a real, worthy person with a real, truthful experience. And again, is this convincing? Back in a minute. Thank you. It's Saturday, and there is a controversy, whatever, going on downtown LA or near downtown LA, and there's some protesters and conflict between the advocates of illegal immigration and ICE and law enforcement. And there's somebody from ABC or Eyewitness News, Channel 7, from ABC covering it. And this is a little blurb from what they're talking about.
Aside from, again, a few of these stragglers who are, looking for trouble or looking to express themselves in any way, whether it's, peaceful or otherwise, if the law enforcement, and you have to ask yourself, if the law enforcement wasn't in place here, would everybody just go home at this point? At least it's a question. But right now, as long as that large law enforcement presence remains on the streets here, you have people who are essentially provoked. They feel threatened.
And what they're doing is called determinism. They're saying that nobody has free will. And that they are forced to do what they do by powers beyond their control. And in this particular case, he's taking the side of the people that are pro-illegal immigration. And he is saying that they have been, and you heard him literally say they've been provoked, that the police department, if they would simply go away, then the protesters actually these are violent, and they're not activists, they're not protesters, they are advocates, and they're advocating for illegal immigration and illegal immigrants. There are also a great number of criminals whose interest is not in peaceful political protest or legal political protest, but simply to commit crimes and get away with them. They use their free will to go out and commit crimes. Because in the shoot, you could see where a car had been set on fire. The other problem with determinism is that you can make the same argument about law enforcement. They say, well, if law enforcement wasn't there, then these people that are advocating for the illegal aliens wouldn't have to show up. They felt that they were provoked. But on the other side of it is law enforcement was provoked. Law enforcement wouldn't be here if they hadn't been provoked by powers beyond their control. The law enforcement, particularly ICE agents, are trying to do their job removing illegal aliens, especially ones that have been convicted, they have deportation orders, etc. And it is the advocates that are doing whatever they possibly can to interfere with that. And if those advocates would simply go home, then there wouldn't be a problem. Then there would be no friction between law enforcement and the advocates, and everything would be okay. But people rarely that advocate determinism rarely look at that end of things. They claim that big tobacco is the villain and forces people to smoke, that nobody would smoke if it wasn't for big tobacco and their commercials and other inducements to smoke. But who forces big tobacco to go out and induce people to smoke? Perhaps the government, perhaps advocates. So, but they don't look at that. Determinism either exists for everybody, everybody's forced to do what they do by powers beyond their control, or it works for nobody. So you got to remember that. Now, in this situation, you're going to hear it from people, your relatives, etc., that are going to pick this up and say that, well, these people feel provoked. It's an arbitrary claim. He doesn't know. He's in a helicopter. How would he know what these people feel or don't feel? Okay, so it's an arbitrary claim. It's not true. It's not false. It's arbitrary. So I can, if somebody tells this to me, well, ICE provoked these people, I can just as easily say, no, they didn't. And so what I'm doing is countering his arbitrary claim with an arbitrary claim of my own. Okay, now what I'm doing by countering him is putting him in the position of put up or shut up. Either prove to me, to my satisfaction, that law enforcement is the provocateur here, or withdraw your claim. So more than likely they will just stare at me, because that's what these people usually do when I counter their claims, is they just stare at me. They don't know what to do. And then if they bother to come up with some kind of, let's say, a piece that they say, well, no, there's a study, or there's a videotape, or you should go look at it. I always tell them, I've already looked at it. You need to look at it and keep looking at it until you figure things out, until you get your mind right. And that ends the conversation right there. So again, to cover this, what this reporter is talking about is determinism. And again, he's supposed to be a news reporter. All he's supposed to be talking about is what, where, when, how, who, and how, right? When he starts talking about cause and effect, he's now involved in analysis. When he makes a value judgment about that cause and effect, he is now involved in commentary. So you see how all of this that's supposed to be news is now getting all jumbled together into news, commentary, and analysis, and really it ends up being nothing more or less than entertainment for the purpose of getting ratings and profits. So non-profit news now. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, what does the phrase, if you're explaining, you're losing, mean? This was said by Ronald Reagan, speaking of political campaigns. From the perspective of your audience, if you have to explain yourself, you come off looking desperate to convince. As a consequence, you lose the high ground. From a more philosophical perspective, if you have a clear conscience and strong conviction towards the positions you take, your values, truth, and direction, you don't need the opinions or consent of others. As a consequence, you don't need to explain yourself. However, if you yourself are not convinced of the validity and truth of your position, or you can't fully justify your choices, then you continue to expel words in an attempt to create the illusion of certainty. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, media buzz, Howard Kurtz, and he's talking about racial discrimination at the Harvard Law Review.
Wasserman, who was just hired by Stephen Miller's staff. A highly unusual move. The Free Beacons documents reveal that about half its members of the Harvard Law Review are chosen by a holistic committee drawing from underrepresented groups. In at least 7 memos obtained by the Free Beacon, editors argued that an author's minority status counted in favor of publishing their article. One memo, last year, the author is a woman of color. This meets a lot of our priorities. Another memo said one pro of an otherwise weak article was that it had been written by a woman of color.
So anyway, so he goes on and on and on about that. But he's not realizing here is that this is so easily defeated. We don't need, and because the kind of subtext to his issue is that the federal government, he said the Trump administration, no, the federal government is investigating the Harvard Law Review for violations, for violating the law. Now, what he doesn't realize, this is very easily defeated by simply identifying, if every person that submits an article to the Harvard Law Review simply identifies as a woman of color, they're going to get published, right? That's all you have to do. Because you see, the left, being stupid, being anti-reality, has, defeated themselves. And what they've done is they have single-handedly done away with racism, misogyny, transphobia, and xenophobia, with the idea of identity, that we all get to identify as whatever we want, whenever we want. That means that I'm not limited to whatever race happens to appear, say, on my birth certificate. I get to be whatever race I want to be at any given time. I get to be whatever, whichever gender or sex I want to be. I get to be whatever ethnicity or tribal orientation. I can decide that I'm a tribal person. And there's nothing the left can say or do about it. Because they cannot, since they do not have any respect for reality, they cannot prove differently. And my two references for this is Senator Pocahontas, who decided to identify as a tribal person in order to get into Harvard, and the lady in Seattle, Washington, who is running the Seattle chapter of the NAACP as a white woman, but insisted that she was black because she felt black. So there you go. So this isn't a controversy other than, again, the real story here is how to defeat it. And you defeat it very easily. You just simply ask somebody, what race do you think I am anyhow? What sex do you think I am anyhow? Try it sometime, maybe with your friends or family. If they want, they maybe jokingly accuse you of being a racist, or say, that sounds racist, mom or dad, or ask them, well, what race do you think I am anyways? And see if they have the guts to answer the question. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now the preamble to the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Back in a minute. Thank you. So, Democrats should support the ICE agents in Los Angeles instead of opposing them and throwing rocks and bottles and stuff like that. It confuses me. They should be celebrating, jumping up and down and celebrating ICE deporting these people, because it saves the country money. It saves us the money of court costs, attorney's fees. It saves us the money of the damages that these people do. And that's all money that can be spent on single-payer health care, or spent to save the planet from global warming, or spent to house the homeless, to name but three of the left's big goals, so to speak. So, again, support. I call on the all right-thinking Democrats. Support ICE in what they're doing. Look at the big picture. What's more important? Some criminal illegal aliens that have been ordered deported, or single-payer health care? Back in a minute. Thank you. So it's Sunday, and Sunday afternoon, evening, and in over in LA, over on the 110, I believe it's the 110 or maybe it's the 101 freeway, there's people that are illegally blocking traffic. They're breaking the law. They should be cited and or arrested as appropriate. But anyways, this is a a clip from the news broadcast from Channel 4 describing the situation.
Last hour moved pretty swiftly to clear out the 101 freeway, but now that they've pushed those demonstrators to the top of the off-ramp and back onto Los Angeles Street in the Civic Center, the question's going to become, well, how long do they stay up there? Is the CHP going to try to expand that perimeter and start pushing demonstrators one way or another? The problem with all of this is it just creates more and more friction points between local law enforcement and the public, who again are there not for the purpose of demonstrating against the local police, but rather the federal agencies. I'll just leave you with one more note. We did hear from the LAPD. We were expecting to see the chief of police, Jim McDonnell, with the mayor this afternoon. Not sure you caught what the mayor was saying. She was on her way from that news briefing to go meet with the police chief, the LA County sheriff, and I believe have a conference call with Gavin Newsom. We're trying to get a hold of the police chief, and we may be able to speak with him sometime later.
Okay, so the important thing is that he was talking about, again, friction points, and he was talking about how if this happens, then something happens automatically. That if you do this, then there's going to be an automatic particular type of response. That's called determinism. It's just not true. People have free will. They can decide to join a group of other people and attempt to shut down the freeways, or they can decide not to do that and go do something else. They can also change their mind. They can decide to go to this particular event, decide that I don't want to engage in illegal activity, and leave. Okay, so that's important, because when the so-called news people are promoting a philosophical theory, particularly one that is wrong, that's very bad. And again, this is an example of what happens with for-profit news. Nonprofit news now. Thank you. And now another mistake on Law and Order.
We used to have a word for women like that.
That's what the rest of the feminists argue. The bottom line is that if surrogacy were legal and regulated, Arnold Zachary might still be alive.
So, and that's absolutely wrong. The guy that, in this particular case, a man was murdered. Supposedly, there's some kind of complicated blackmail situation, but his wife was unable to conceive, so he had another party be the surrogate for his child. So, and then he ends up getting killed by the husband of this other couple. So she's making the argument that if we only had enough laws, that this murder wouldn't have taken place. But that's wrong. He was murdered because the individual that killed him is a killer, a murderer. The individual is probably wanted to kill or murder for his entire life and has been looking for a reason to do so. And when he found the excuse he needed to kill another human being, he did so. He's a murderer. That's why the individual is dead, not because of we don't have enough laws in this country. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, trust your mind.
Chapter 3. Vulnerability to extremism. While pursuing group identity can be a means of seeking shelter, it can serve darker purposes. Although there is much talk of the importance of belonging and community, what one finds in a group is more often temporary, and the idea of group identity has severe limitations. After all, one is bound by one's literal skin and body, subject to one's own thoughts and disenchantments. There will always be some degree of separation, even under the illusion of merging, bonding, or togetherness. In fact, feelings of lack of personal significance or existential uncertainty precede not only group identity, but extremism as well. Extremism can be understood as a kind of unhinged, unrestrained clinging to intense thought with an almost addictive or obsessive force. It clouds judgment in politics, relationships, science, education, and more. Extremism takes to the edge any semblance of an idea and turns thoughts and perspectives into the only truth. And once you learn extremism's inner workings, you begin to see it all around, on all political sides and in all aspects of daily life. Understanding it offers a counterweight against which you can measure and temper your own inclinations in a healthier way. Given the intense group pressures across social media, we are all, in a sense, swimming in extremism, and it merely passes for the norm. But once you learn about extremism, what it looks like and what motivates it, you may recognize it in your own life. As such, it's important to probe further and evaluate the line between a healthy sense of community and an extreme sense of groupthink. Fortunately, researchers and social scientists across the world are hard at work unraveling the hidden psychological forces that shape our mindsets and behaviors, and you deserve to know what is being uncovered. The literature on extremism is extensive, stemming mainly from wide interest in political violence internationally, as well as more recent ideological polarization found in the United States. Surprisingly, from the studies on ex-terrorists that focus on the psychological underpinnings of radicalization, it's not too far of a stretch to say that some of the same psychological processes occur on a smaller scale every day with our neighbors, friends, and colleagues. That is, some of the same needs and ways of thinking can be found across a range of human interactions, from neighbor squabbles to violent terrorism. Intense needs drive intense behaviors, with belonging, meaning, and purpose being prime examples of what drive our behavior in the world. Psychologists tackled the study of extremism via various theories. What is missing, however, is a broad framework for how the Internet has created new groups and pathways of radicalization. And I don't mean exposure to early sites like 4chan, as we saw in the 2000s. I mean that people's minds and conceptions of themselves have literally been altered in parallel with the algorithms reinforcing identity. The Internet has created vast exposure, which has created widespread uncertainty and now led to extreme group identification. The virtual world has created new interest groups, and those groups are now active offline and creating real change, for both good and bad. The Internet has enabled entire new classes of people organized around psychographics, the classification of people according to their attitudes, aspirations, and other psychological criteria. As leading group identity researcher at Claremont Graduate University, Michael Hogg writes in Current Directions in Psychological Science, identifying with a group is a powerful way to resolve self-uncertainty. Self-uncertainty places a premium on identity-defining belief systems that are distinctive, unambiguous, all-encompassing, explanatory, and behaviorally prescriptive. That is, in our era of dizzying information onslaught and wide-ranging identity explorations, groups and labels that offer certainty become highly appealing. And it turns out that this kind of research on the psychology of group identity formation is exactly what is needed to help us understand extremism in ourselves and in our world. A British social psychologist who spent his childhood in South Asia, Hogg later studied in the UK and settled in Southern California, and he now leads several international research initiatives focused on extremism and group identity. He designed and developed uncertainty identity theory, which is referenced widely in psychological literature, and its definition is just what it sounds like. Self-uncertainty makes one vulnerable to groups that have strong, clearly defined norms and rules, thus offering the uncertain person a strong sense of identity and self-certainty. Applying this theory to today, we can see such a phenomenon all around us, as people we may know in our own lives become captive to any number of ideologies and groups, that actually start on X, Instagram, TikTok, or Facebook. Current fads and fan bases around beauty trends like face yoga are mild examples, but more serious cults or ideologies that lead to religious fanaticism are another. Uncertainty identity theory is a motivational account of group and intergroup behavior and social identity phenomena, writes Hogg, but it can also explain the conditions under which radicalization and extremism arise and the various forms they can take. People strive to reduce uncertainty, especially uncertainties that reflect on or are directly about who they are. He continues, group identification reduces uncertainty because it causes people to internalize a shared identity and associated group prototype, which defines and prescribes who one is and how one should behave, and describes how one will be perceived and treated by others. However, some groups and identities are better equipped to reduce self-uncertainty. Specifically, distinctive groups with clearly defined and prescriptive identities that are relatively unambiguous and consensual. In more extreme circumstances and manifestations, self-uncertainty can motivate a strong preference for and zealous identification with extremist groups. Groups that have identities that echo populist ideology and behavior, and associated conspiracy theories and narratives of victimhood, and have strong and directive leaders who can be populist, autocratic, and toxic.
Thank you. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there, and reminding you that greed is not conservative.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.